Hi there. Thank you for joining me for this talk on remote work and specifically on how we keep remote workers happy and productive. This has become a huge topic, especially since COVID, and a lot of people are treating it like, remote work is something new and mysterious that we need to figure out. It isn't. About 5 years ago, I was in Belgium to speak at a conference arranged by some of our amazing partners there. And as part of this event, they took us to visit a place called the Federale Overheidsdienst Soziale Sicherheit. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that completely wrong. This is a government agency with, I think, 3,000 employees who are in charge of helping disabled people in Belgium get the aid for the physical aids they need, like walkers or wheelchairs. We got to tour the office as well, and you can see their office is gorgeous. They have these beautiful meeting spaces. Here's a little meeting pot. I thought that was really cool. But you can also see that the office is almost completely depopulated, except for us visitors. This was on a Friday afternoon, sorry, Friday morning. Um, but it isn't that just that they're not working Fridays. This government agency has, for 15 years, had the policy that employees can work wherever they want. Nobody's checking up on them. If they want to be in the office, they can. But if they want to work from home, if they want to work from a cafe, if they want to go out and visit some of the citizens they serve, they can do that, and nobody's monitoring that. They have complete freedom to work wherever they want, and they've been doing that. This is 5 years ago. They've been doing it for 15 years at that time, so now they've been doing it for 20 years, and it totally worked for them. They found that it created a culture of trust among employees that made them feel valuable and made them more motivated. It allowed them to attract the best employees and retain them, and it made their employees more productive. So I feel like we're getting this discussion all wrong, and too many people are treating this like some mysterious new beast that we need to figure out. There are ways to make this work, and some companies have been doing this for 20 years. So let's talk about that. And here are the topics that I have planned. I want to talk about, first of all, why this is a great idea. I think we need to. I'm sure we have a great idea of that already, but I think we need to talk about it so that we have the ammunition and the arguments to tell our workplaces that yes, we should do remote work. Here is why this is great for the company and for the employees. I want to talk about how to make this work. I don't think you could just tell everybody, okay, from now on you can work wherever you want, or from now you can work from home. I think we need to talk about how we work and make sure that we work in a way that works even remotely. It is new for some companies, and we need to figure out how it works. I also want to talk about what not to do, and I think there are some companies right now doing great examples of how not to do this. And then I want to show you some great examples from remote workplaces from around the world. Um, why are we even talking about this? Well, for me, it's so. Here's how I see it. With COVID, a lot of workplaces were forced to let their employees work from home, very much against their will in many cases. And now that some time has passed, they feel like, okay, now it's time to force them back into the office, right? Get them back into their pens where they belong. And you see all the headlines. You see like Meta wants employees back in the office. Amazon wants employees back in the office. J.P. Morgan Chase, Google wants them back in the office. Apple wants them back in the office part time, and so on and so on and so on. So I wanna talk against this wave a little bit, and that's what we're gonna do here. We have about half an hour. We're gonna keep it short and snappy. If you have any questions, please write a question on the video or on the webinar page, and I'll take your questions at the end. So why do some companies feel like they have to force their employees back into the office? Well, these are the official worries they talk about. How do we preserve the company culture? That's a legitimate worry, I feel. How can we make sure that we have the right culture among our employees if they don't see each other physically in the same room at the same time? How do we foster innovation and teamwork is a classic worry. How do we coordinate work if somebody has a question, if somebody doesn't know what to do, if somebody doesn't know how to proceed with their work? How do we make sure that they know how to get their questions answered? And also a common concern is, what about new employees? They don't know the company culture. They don't know the structures and the organization and the ways of working. How do we make sure they're covered? A classic example of that is Jamie Dimon, the CEO of J.P. Morgan Chase. He held a town hall meeting with worried J.P. Morgan Chase employees recently, because he's told them to get back in the office. They don't want it. They signed a petition. Can we please not do this? and he held this expletive-laden, very angry rant. Uh, here's like the nice version, the official version. It doesn't work for creativity. It slows down decision making. And then, of course, the young people, the young generation is being damaged by this. They're being left behind socially in ideas and with meeting people. Um, I have two comments about this. This is very common. Like, how do we coordinate work? How do we stay innovative? How do we stay competitive? How do we stay productive? And what about the young people when they're not in the office? Two things about this. First of all, I think they're idolizing the being in the office. Like, if you're in the office and you have a question that only Jane can help you with, what do you do? Well, of course you could like run into Jane over coffee, and that might be great, a great time to ask her. But you could also go to Jane's office and interrupt whatever she's doing, and ask your question. And that is what happens a lot of the time. If you're in a like an open office space, you can lean into the Jane's cubicle and say, "Hey, Jane, do you have a second?" And now you've already disturbed Jane. So I think we're underestimating like the interruption factor here. Another thing about this is that if I ask Jane directly, I ask her a question, she tells me the answer, I hear it, but then that is gone. That is not preserved as institutional knowledge, organizational knowledge in any way. Whereas if I go on Slack or email or any other channel and write a question and she writes it back, then first of all, she can do it on her own time when I'm not interrupting her. And secondly, that answer is now preserved. It's searchable. Somebody else might find that and find it useful. Um, so so this I think and honestly, even when people are in the office, that is how a lot of coordination happens. That is how we get a lot of our questions answered. We don't necessarily go and disturb Jane. We might send Jane an instant message, a chat message, a Slack message. We might send her an email and ask, and then she can answer it on her own time. So I feel like companies are like idolizing this personal contact a little bit. And there is something to, running into people over lunch in the office, and saying, hey, by the way, I wanted to ask you about this project or whatever. But even when people are in the office at the same time, that is not how most communication and coordination happens. It still happens over the other channels that work equally well remotely. So these are, like I said, these are the official worries of many CEOs and workplaces, right? This is what they say when they think about what they're saying. When they don't, their real worry is that people are just not working from home, or when they're working, when they're remote, they're just not working. In that rant, Jamie Dimon said this, and don't give me that crap that work from home Friday works. I call a lot of people on Friday. There's not a goddamn person to get hold of. And honestly, you need to go online and find his entire rant. It is hilarious and terrible. Um, Another example is the British rich person Alan Sugar, who said, "This is a bloody joke. The lazy gits make me sick. All this work from home is a total joke. There's no way people work as hard or as productive." When he was challenged on that, he was like, "Listen, scumbag. Most work from home watch more TV than work." I want to be very clear. All the research says that is not the case. People work as productively, maybe even more productively from home. Why is Lord Sugar, he's an actual lord, why is he so against working from home? Well, maybe because he has huge investments in office spaces in the UK. And those investments are suffering because, more and more people are working from home and companies need less and less office space. A very prominent example that really annoyed me is Elon Musk, who wrote, forced Tesla and Twitter employees back into the office and said, if they want to pretend to work from home, they should pretend to work somewhere else. So the CEOs, their official worries are, what about coordination? What about young employees? But really, really deep down, it's about, we don't believe people are working. And my comment to that is, of course, if your people are, not in the office where you watch them and the first thing they do is not work, is they slack off, who hired those people? And who did such a terrible job of motivating them that the first thing they do is, try to get out of work by working from home? And I also want to make this very clear that while some companies are forcing employees back into the office, a lot of companies are not. Companies like Airbnb, BP, Canva, Dropbox, Spotify is a great example of a company that is very deliberately being completely remote, and people can work from wherever they want. I love this quote from Spotify's CHRO, who says that you can't spend a lot of time hiring grown-ups and then treat them like children. Work is not a place you come to, it's something you do. Why shouldn't we give our people flexibility and freedom? I think that is great. So, if remote work is so terrible, why are these companies not forcing people back into the office? Well, it's because it's not terrible. It's actually great. It's great for employees on many factors, but these are the four I want to mention. Better work-life balance. When you work from home, when you have the options to work remotely, you can better integrate your homework and your private life. Like if there's a chore you need to do during the day, you can do that and then work the rest of the day, for instance. Less commute time is a huge one, especially in the US where people tend to have very long commutes. And we know that the longer a person's average daily commute time is, the less happy they are at work, the more stressed they are, and the worse their health is. Fewer interruptions when you work from home. People can't just drop by and ask you a question, and if they do send you an email, you can answer it on your own time when it fits your work rhythm. And finally, when people get the option to work remotely, they feel trusted. The company actually trusts me to do my job in whatever way works best for me. And when people feel trusted, they feel more motivated, they do better work. And just to make this very clear, so the question I ask is, how do we make remote employees happier and productive? Well, we kind of don't have to. They already are. Here's some research. Gallup made a great report on the state of the American workplace. By the way, where the version that came out this year concludes that it's getting worse, and it's the worst it's been since 2015, and more people are feeling disengaged at work. But there's some good news in here. So, for instance, one of the piece of good news is that employee engagement is low, but it's lowest for fully on-site employees who don't have the option to work remotely. And the group that has the highest workplace engagement are the people who are either exclusively remote or hybrid, and I think that's a great point. An interesting thing about the Gallup report is that it tries to put a little bit of a negative spin on remote work. For instance, one of the headlines is that exclusively remote employees feel the least connected to organization's mission and purpose. But when you actually look at the data, I'll show you here, you can see that the differences are very slight. Let's see, the blue line is exclusively remote, and those are the ones that feel the least connected. But the difference are very, like 34, 31, 31, and you can see the group that feels the least connected is actually the fully on-site employees. So yeah, that's not great. That is just not great. The way they treat that data. There is nothing to indicate that remote employees feel less connected to the company's mission and values compared to fully on-site employees. So remote work is great for employees. It's also great for the business. And we know that for a number of reasons. I mean, one is lower office costs. If not everybody's in the office at the same time, you don't need as big of an office. You can save a lot of money there. Happier employees, we just saw that, and we know from the research, I talk a lot about this a lot in my speeches, that happy employees do better work. They're more productive, more creative. They give better customer service if they're in a customer service facing industry. They have lower absenteeism and so on. Higher productivity. Studies show that employees who work from home are at least as productive as those who are in the office full time. And then, of course, another great benefit for the company is that they can attract and retain the best talent. And this works in two ways. First of all, if you have remote work, you don't need to only hire people who are in the city that the company's in or willing to relocate to that city. If you have remote work, you can hire people from anywhere in the world. That massively expands your potential talent pool. And also, the other way it works is that there are people out there who will not take a job that is fully on site, where they have to be in the office every workday. And if you force them, if you want everybody to be in the office all the time, you cannot hire any of those people. And that pool is increasing. Studies show that more and more people will only take a job if it can be at least part-time remote, at least hybrid. So companies that allow that have a much better chance of attracting and retaining the best talent. Okay, So let's say your company's currently doing remote work, or you want to look into it. What are some ways not to do it? Um, I think what I see is that okay, we'll let people work from home, but we need to know what they're doing. So we'll have more meetings. We'll like have daily status meetings or something. We'll have more reports. Like people have to report minute by minute what they're spending their time on, so we know they're actually working. Some companies take this to the extreme, and install like keyloggers so we can see that people are actually typing, or even like webcam apps so they can see that people are on the computer in front of their laptop. That is terrible. Do not do that. That is just a massive sign of mistrust in the employees. Again, if you don't trust these people, why did you hire them in the first place? And another thing not to is constant interruptions. Okay, I need to know that Jane is working. I'll send Jane a quick Slack message, and if she doesn't respond, I'll send her an email, and if she doesn't respond to that, I'll call her. Um, those are some of the things that we do see companies doing when they introduce remote work, and that is just terrible. Stop that. So what should we do? And it won't surprise anybody who knows our work that we keep coming back to the same model. What is it that makes people happy at work? Results and relationships. That is where we need to focus. And it's such a great model because it's very simple, and people can see themselves in it. People need the feeling of results, that they're doing great work, they're making a difference, they're achieving their goals, and people need to feel they have good relationships in the workplace, that they're connected to the people they work with. Or to put it in a different way, we need to know that we do great work together with great people. So I want to give some tips on how we do this. I want to give you some tips on how we create that feeling of results remotely, and how we create that feeling of relationships remotely. And yes, that is a little harder than doing it in the office. You need to be more intentional about it. Some things happen naturally when people are in the same room at the same time, that you need to create consciously when they're remote. So let's look at that. And the first tip I want to give you is to communicate wins and progress. This is so important. And if you're in the same office, you can maybe hear that somebody else just completed a task, and you can talk to them about it. If you're remote, maybe you need to communicate that somehow. So you could have like a wall of win. You could have like a company or a project or a team website, internal website, where people can share their wins and their progress. You could have like a piece of software that shows how are we progressing in each individual task, so we can communicate that we're actually advancing towards our goals. And that feeling of progress, that feeling of celebrating our wins, is just super important. And we need to create that remotely somehow. Um, Tip number 2, positive feedback. Positive feedback is incredibly important. And again, when you're in the same office at the same time, you can go up to Jane and say, Jane, I saw how you handled that project. Here's what I really liked. You did this, you did that, you did this. Great work, Jane. So if you're not in the same office at the same time, you can do that remotely, which can actually be even more powerful. So you could send Jane an email. And when Jane gets that email, she can save that email. There are many like kudos apps and positive feedback apps that I think are great for saving that. And then somebody can see, here's all the praise that positive feedback that Jane received, or here's all the positive feedback that our team gave out this week, or whatever. And those things are preserved, they're saved for posterity, so we can enjoy them later also. Hugely important for our feeling of progress, our feeling of results. We need to of course, we need to coordinate our work, and we need meetings. I don't think meetings are necessarily bad in themselves, but we need good meetings. And when meetings are virtual, I think they need to be shorter and more targeted. So instead of a 1-hour meeting with 10 people about like the whole project, could we have 4 15-hour meetings that are 15-hour. I meant 4 15-minute meetings that are more targeted. So in the first 15 minutes, we're going to talk about this. Then in the next 15 minutes, we're going to talk about this topic, and then this topic, and then that topic. And then people can decide if they are, they don't have to be there for the whole meeting, if they're not relevant for the whole meeting. If they are, obviously they can participate in all of it. But if they're like, nope, the only thing that's important to me is that second 15 minutes where we're talking about this topic, that's what I'm working on, or that's where I have some questions, then people can pick and choose. And if the meeting is relevant, then people will be focused in the meeting. if they're forced to attend a 1 hour meeting where only 15 minutes of it is relevant, that is when people zoom out. That's when people just completely tune out and, they're surfing the web or watching cat videos or whatever. Um, so this is definitely, think about how we have meetings and have shorter and more targeted meetings that are more relevant to people. Actually, there was another interesting result from the Gallup report is that people actually believe that virtual meetings can be as productive. When they asked, do you feel like virtual meetings are more effective? 52% said there's no difference. So I think that's great. Virtual meetings can be as effective or maybe even more effective if we shorten them and make them more targeted. Tip number 4, communicate meaning and purpose. It's incredibly important for a feeling of results that we don't just know what we're doing, we also know why we're doing it and how our work makes a positive difference for somebody, for the client, for another team, for our project, whatever. So if we can constantly say, hey team, here's how you made a difference this week. Here's how we made a difference with our work. Here's how this decision helped this person, for instance. That is incredibly important. So it's not just targets, but it's meaningful targets. I don't know if you're watching Severance right now. I am, and it's phenomenal. Where they're these employees in macro data refinement are sorting these numbers, and they have no idea why they're doing it. They're just told that the work is important and mysterious, and I think that's hilarious and an interesting reflection on how a lot of people feel about their work because they only know what they're doing, they don't know why they're doing it. Cool. So that's some ideas for creating results. What about relationships? And you might feel like, well, if people aren't in the office, how do we create relationships? That's going to be super hard. Not necessarily. There's an article. I found an article, and I'm going to link to it when I send you the video materials that said that virtual interactions could actually strengthen workplace bonds. Employees who caught glimpses of colleagues' non-work lives during video calls, such as a child interrupting a meeting or a personal item in the background, were more likely to view coworkers as authentic, trustworthy, and relatable, which will help to foster both professional collaboration and personal connection. I think that's a really interesting point. If we have the two of us have a meeting in the office, we're just going to see each other, in our nice business suits. But if we have a Zoom meeting from home, virtual meeting from home, you might see, my books in the background. You might see, my kid walking in if I have children, that kind of thing. Or you might see something like, this is hilarious. This is a British member of parliament who had a meeting, and this is what happened.
YouTube Kids do it, and the BBC are also now embracing this. Why, and apologise for my cat's tail, why are you not doing this by default? Rocco, could you tell them?
I think that's hilarious. Rocco, put your tail down. So there's nothing to say that we can't create great workplace relationships also when people are working remotely. How do we do that? I have some tips. First, frequent short check-ins. So for instance, with managers, one of the tools we recommend is that managers take 5 minutes a day with one employee, just checking in on how they're doing. Not checking up on their work, just checking in on them as human beings. And that could easily be done remotely. Like, you don't take 5 minutes out of every person's day every day. But like once a day, you take 5 minutes with this employee, then the next day you take another employee, then the third employee, and then circle around to the first employee once you've gone through everybody. That would be a very, very simple thing to do. And the agenda here is just, hey, how are things? What's working? What's going on with you? What's working well? Any problems? Any way I can help you? That is a great way to create those relationships. Another way to do it is to measure how employees are feeling. And I always say that the usual job satisfaction survey, that people run annually, that will not work because you can't measure it annually only. That's just not good enough. That's why we created a heart count, which is the best damn tool out there for measuring how employees feel. It's a very quick survey, 3 questions once a week, where the questions change regularly. And then you can see exactly how every single person is doing. I talked to the HR manager of a tech company in Poland, who said that during COVID, this had been a lifesaver because they were used to being able to, she was used to being able to, go around to every desk and talk to everybody and see how they were doing. Now she couldn't do that because everybody was working from home. But with this, she had weekly data on how every single person in the company was feeling. And if somebody had a problem, she could follow up on that and do something about it. But actually measuring how people feel frequently, I think, is super important and a good way to catch problems early and show people that you care. Show people that you care about them and are willing to address any problems and issues they're facing. Tip number 3, bring people together once in a while. So if they're not in the office every day, maybe like once a year, twice a year, have a physical meeting where people get together in the office or somewhere else. Because there are some things that happen when people are together physically. But it doesn't need to be every day. You can create a lot of great relationships if you do this once in a while. In the tech company that I ran in Copenhagen, we had 2 annual offsites because we were also working remotely. We did programming work for clients around Copenhagen, so we were in the office quite rarely. A lot of us were, primarily at the customer sites. So it was super important for us that twice a year we got together in the winter for a ski trip somewhere with lots of talks about the company's strategy and future. And then in the spring we had in summertime we had an offsite where we brought kids and spouses along and did it there. And that is super important as well. I think this is a great tool as well. Tip number 4, I think is interesting. Optimize the office for gatherings. So today, most offices are, their primary focus is your workspace, right? Here's your desk, here's your computer, this is where you work, and it's optimized for individual work. But if people are mostly remote, and then occasionally we bring them into the office for team meetings, project meetings, that kind of thing, maybe we need to optimize the office for that instead and have more meeting spaces and fewer desks. A company that's done this really well is an Australian tech company called Atlassian. You should definitely look into them. I'm going to link to their materials on remote work. They've been doing it, and they're very open about sharing their experiences. And one of the things they did was for their Austin office, they actually they optimized that for gatherings, not for individual work, but for teams and projects coming together. And I thought that was a great idea. So there's like lots of meeting spaces, lots of the conference center where groups and teams can meet. I thought that was a fantastic idea. So make sure that your office supports that and not just individual work. And then tip number 5 for relationships is to onboard new employees in person, at least partly. And I've seen companies do this where depending on how many people they hire, they might have a monthly session, a session every other month, a session every quarter for new employees where they get together physically. They get brought in, no matter where in the world they work, they get brought into the office for not so much for job training, but mostly about, like culture training. What is our culture like? What are the behaviors we value? What are the values we have in this office? I think this is super important to give new employees a good start on building a connection to the company. So those are some ideas that I've seen work really, really well in remote workplaces around the world. I do have one bonus tip. And that is, if for any CEO who really, really wants their employees back in the office, why not, instead of forcing them, why not create an office that's so amazing that people actually want to go there? Why not talk to your employees and figure out, what would make the office amazing for you? What would be something we can, have in the office that would make you actually want to come there? Maybe not every day, but quite often. And I think this approach is way more human and way more effective than just saying to everybody, nope, 5 days in the office or was it Amazon said? At least 5 days in the office every week. Beyond that, you're free to work from home. I was like, come on. Cool. Those were my thoughts and tips and some research on this. Let me check and see if there are any questions.